Okay, today we're going to talk about one of my favorite stillwater patterns, and I want to give you a brief, well, maybe not so brief, history so you can understand how to make flies with this style of pattern, this dubbing, and pay homage to a friend who's no longer with us.
Dude, that's a big brown bro.
All right, this guy, little tiger, ate one of my favorite stillwater patterns. It's a damsel. It's called a Spectrumized Damsel. Now, I think this style of pattern, or let's just call it a dubbing mix for damselflies, warrants some history. So we're going to go back 20 years. Is it 20 years? Holy moly, 20 years ago. Friend of mine named Jeff Brooks, who passed away last year, I believe. Really good guy, great fisherman, great fly tyer. So this was in the early 2000s. He was messing with a mix of dubbing of a bunch of different colors. He would tell us kind of the history of how he came about this specific dubbing mix for damsels. And near as I can remember, it was Strawberry Reservoir in Utah. And if you know Jeff, he was a consummate learner and experimenter with flies and fly patterns, colors, that sort of thing. And so he would go out and fish the damsels on Strawberry Reservoir. And what he found was that, if he just stuck to, say, an straight olive dubbing or a straight tan dubbing, that he wasn't getting as good results as when he would mix the colors. So he started to study the damsel nymphs, the naturals, and realized that the naturals, and I would say this actually holds true for a lot of insects and a lot of things in the natural world, there really is no such thing as a solid color, or very rarely. And so he started to add additional colors to this mix in order to get a little bit more realism, or I think probably more than anything to reflect a different amount of color spectrum. At least that's kind of his theory on that. And so what that involved was finding, number one, the dubbing colors. And so a lot of these colors or dubbing mixes had mylar, some were natural. And as he kind of went on, he realized that the more colors he added, or at least he kind of got a little bit more technical about it, more dubbing styles, dubbing types, he would catch more fish. And when I first heard this and I saw his recipe, this is probably in 2003 or 4. I'm like, okay, seriously, like what if you left one of the 10, I don't even remember. I could probably dig up the original recipe, which consisted of 10 or 15 different dubbing bag colors. I remember going to a local fly shop with a bunch of friends, including Jeff, and we had this we did it a couple of times. We'd have dubbing mix parties. And he was super, super set on this spectrumized style of dubbing mix for damselflies. And the fly, as he tied it, and we'll pop a picture up so you can see, was just like a size 10 or 8 reach hook. Just like a standard hook. And then the dubbing body, nothing else, no fancy, no eyes. He'd have a little tail, I think, which was pheasant rump. We'll list the materials for our version of those down below, like comments. But it was a really cool dubbing, because you would look at it and when you tie your flies with it, you put the flies in the water, and depending on kind of how the sun was, you'd see different color reflections. It was actually really cool. And Jeff he was a great fisherman, knew a lot about stillwater specifically. And so I took my clump of this dubbing and I started to experiment with that seed pattern. And I just couldn't believe it. I would say out of any type of fly that I would use, even outside of damsel season, this one was by far the best performing for me. And if it was during damsel season, lights out. And so I got to realize, I think for me, number one, you could see the fly from quite a ways away. It reflected light a lot differently than other patterns. And I eventually got it kind of narrowed down, because I'm like, if I fly and I'm like, I don't think I need the wing case, I'll leave that out. Or I don't think I need the legs, I'll leave that out. And that's kind of how I did over the years with Jeff's original Spectrumized Damsel dubbing mix. And so I have a number of damsel patterns that I've used over the years that are based on that dubbing mix. Like I said, we'll leave a link down below where you can get the different dubbing mixes. We'll put that there for you. So suffice it to say, this is one of my favorite material mixes to use in stillwater. I use it on my belly flop damsel. I use it on Jeff's original, straight, easy peasy damsel pattern. So my advice is get this dubbing, make your dubbing mix. We have, it's a mix, so you'll still have to use a couple of 3 different colors. And then use that on your damsels. I've used it on calabatus patterns. I've used it on leeches. And like I said, even when the damsels aren't coming off really strong, this is still a stillwater pattern. Like this fish I just caught, I had been using a leech and some chironomids at first. The fishing's been a little slow. So I put on this, this was a balanced version of that same, with my personal mix that I made. And I immediately had 2 whacks, and then this one over here that I just released. It's one of those weird things. If it's slow, that's one of the first flies that I'll go to. That's one of the first dubbing mixes that I'll use for any damsel pattern. And then you can always add and subtract different colors. If you want it more olive, add a little bit more olive. If you want it more golden, you can put more gold, subtract some of the olive stuff. Anyway, mess around with it. It's a great concept. And that is mix dubbing colors, get as much in there as you can. I mean, within reason. You don't need to be throwing 30 different colors in there. But this color mix is an extremely effective damsel pattern, and you don't have to do anything fancy. You literally could just tie it like a leech, and it will catch you some fish. I pretty much guarantee it. Anyway, check us out at Fly Fish Food. We'll list everything in the dubbing mix down below. We'll also have it on another link you can click and get the recipe and the full video tutorial for a couple of the flies. Anyway, take it.